It was a rainy Tuesday afternoon when Thomas heard the unmistakable sound of laughter drifting through the open window of his modest home in the suburbs. The kind of laughter that, when you hear it, makes you feel warm inside, but in this instance, it felt like a cold shiver running down his spine. He had just returned from a long day at work, exhausted and eager to spend quality time with his wife, Linda. They had been married for over a decade, and although life had thrown its fair share of challenges their way, they had always stood by each other. But that laughter, it was different. It was too light, too carefree, and it didn't belong to Linda. Thomas paused at the door, his heart racing as he listened. His instincts kicked in, and he gently pushed the door open, peering inside. What he saw shattered his world in an instant. There, in their living room, was Linda, entwined in the embrace of another man. They were laughing, sharing a bottle of wine, and the intimacy of their interaction was painfully clear. The sight hit Thomas like a punch to the gut. He felt the air leave his lungs, the ground beneath him shifting as his heart sank. The betrayal was raw and brutal, and he stood frozen, a silent witness to the unraveling of his life. As the reality of the situation seeped in, anger replaced the shock. It was a fire that ignited within him, fueled by years of trust and love that had been so carelessly tossed aside. Thomas felt every emotion swirl within him: hurt, disbelief, and an overwhelming urge for justice. He was not one to shy away from confrontation, but this was different. This was not just about him. It was about dignity, respect, and the vows they had exchanged. After a few moments that felt like an eternity, Thomas quietly stepped back, careful not to disturb the scene inside. He needed time to gather his thoughts, to strategize how to address this profound betrayal. He couldn't simply confront them. In a fit of rage, he had to be calculated. He would not let this moment define him. He was a man of principles, and he would find a way to reclaim his dignity. That night, after Linda had left with her clandestine partner, Thomas sat in the dim light of his living room, the shadows playing tricks on his mind. He thought about their years together, the dreams they had shared, the plans they had made. How could she throw it all away for a fleeting moment of pleasure? The question burned in his mind, and as he mulled over his options, a sense of clarity began to form. He decided to gather evidence. He would not confront her without the full picture. Over the next few weeks, he became a silent observer, capturing fleeting moments, texts, and phone calls. Each revelation stoked the flames of his resolve. With every piece of information he collected, he felt more empowered. This was not just about revenge. It was about reclaiming his life and ensuring that Linda faced the consequences of her actions. Then came the day he had been waiting for. Armed with the evidence he had painstakingly gathered, he decided to confront her. It was a Sunday afternoon when he chose to bring it all to light. The sun filtered through the curtains, casting a warm glow in their home, but Thomas felt nothing but cold determination. Linda walked through the door, a smile on her face, completely unaware of the storm brewing beneath the surface. "Hey honey, I hope you're hungry. I made your favorite," she chirped, her voice cheerful and bright, as if nothing was amiss. Thomas felt a surge of anger mixed with a heavy sadness. He couldn't let her think that everything was normal. He steeled himself for the conversation that would change everything. "Linda, we need to talk," he said, his voice steady but firm. Her expression shifted, a flicker of unease crossing her face. "What's wrong?" He took a deep breath, recalling the moments he had witnessed, the laughter that once brought him joy, now twisted into something sinister. "I know about him," he stated simply, watching as her face paled. "What do you mean?" she stammered, a hint of panic creeping into her voice. "I've seen the texts, the calls. You've betrayed us, Linda. You've betrayed our marriage." The silence that followed was palpable, thick with tension. Linda's eyes darted around the room, searching for an escape, but there was none. Thomas had laid bare the truth, and now she had to face it. "You don't understand," she finally exclaimed, desperation seeping into her tone. "It was just a mistake." "A mistake?" he interrupted, his voice rising. "This isn't a mistake, Linda. This is a choice you made, a choice to destroy everything we built together." As they stood there, the weight of his words hung in the air, and Thomas felt a mix of triumph and sorrow. He was no longer the victim. He was reclaiming his narrative. But as the confrontation unfolded, he knew that this was merely the beginning. He had more in store for her, a plan to ensure that she understood the consequences of her actions, not just for herself, but for the life they had shared. Thomas wouldn't let this betrayal go unanswered. He would find a way to make her feel the pain she had inflicted on him. The path ahead was uncertain, but one thing was for sure. He would not allow his dignity to be trampled upon. The fire in his heart was igniting a plan, a quest for justice that would unveil itself in the most unexpected ways. And as he stood face to face with the woman he once loved, the wheels of retribution began to turn, setting the stage for a confrontation that would reverberate through the fabric of their lives. With each day that passed after the confrontation, Thomas found himself engulfed in a storm of emotions, a blend of anger, sadness, and an unexpected sense of freedom. No longer shackled by the weight of betrayal, he began to envision a future beyond Linda, a life where he could reclaim his self-respect. But the desire for retribution lingered in his mind like a persistent itch that refused to subside. He had spent countless nights awake contemplating the best course of action. Revenge, he reasoned, wasn't merely about causing pain. It was about sending a message that such betrayal had consequences. The more he thought about it, the more he realized the importance of carefully orchestrating his next steps. He wanted to ensure that Linda would understand the full impact of her actions, not only on him, but on the life they had built together. Thomas began by reaching out to a close friend, Mark, who had always been a source of wisdom and support. Over coffee, Thomas recounted the tale of his shattered marriage, and Mark listened intently, offering both empathy and advice. "You can't let her think she can just walk away from this without facing the repercussions," he said. "You deserve to be respected, and sometimes that means making sure they understand the gravity of their choices." Inspired by Mark's words, Thomas devised a plan that would make Linda confront the reality of her betrayal. He would enlist the help of those who had once been part of their lives, the friends who had cheered for them as a couple, the family who had welcomed her as a daughter. They would all bear witness to the unraveling of the life she had so callously discarded. One evening, Thomas invited a few of their closest friends over for what he framed as a casual get-together. As they arrived, he felt a surge of confidence. He had carefully crafted a narrative, one that would reveal Linda's true character without resorting to petty revenge. He wanted them to see her for who she really was, not the facade she had crafted over years of marriage. As the evening progressed, laughter filled the air, and for a fleeting moment, Thomas felt a sense of normalcy return. However, he knew the time for truth was approaching. When the moment felt right, he stood up, his heart racing. "I want to thank you all for being here tonight. There's something important I need to share, something that has changed my life forever." The room quieted, and he could feel the weight of their attention. He took a deep breath, steadying his voice. "Linda and I have been married for over a decade, but recently, I discovered that she has been unfaithful. This isn't easy for me to say, but I believe it's important for you all to know the truth." Gasps filled the room, and he could see shock wash over the faces of their friends. Linda, caught completely off guard, paled as she turned towards him, confusion and anger battling in her eyes. "Thomas, you can't be serious. You're embarrassing me," she exclaimed, her voice rising. But Thomas pressed on, unwavering. "You see, It's not just about me, it's about the trust that has been shattered, about the lives we've built together, and how easily they can be torn apart. I want you all to understand what betrayal looks like, and that it has real consequences." He gestured towards the friends gathered around him, who were now exchanging looks of disbelief. Linda's facade crumbled as she realized that Thomas had turned the tables. The vulnerability of her situation dawned on her, and for the first time, she was truly on the defensive. "You're making a mistake. This isn't how you handle things," she pleaded, desperation creeping into her voice. But Thomas was resolute. "No, Linda, the mistake was yours the moment you chose to betray me. You took our love and trust for granted. And now it's time for you to face the reality of your choices." The tension in the room was palpable, and he could see their friends shifting uncomfortably, grappling with the betrayal that had unfolded before them. As he continued to speak, he knew that this was only the beginning of a much larger plan. The emotional toll of the evening weighed heavily on him, but he felt a surge of strength as he laid out the truth. He wanted Linda to not only feel the pain of her actions, but also to reflect on the depth of her choices and the hurt it would leave behind. After that night, things began to change. Thomas found a renewed sense of purpose. He started spending more time with friends, rediscovering hobbies he had long neglected, and focusing on his own healing. He even explored new opportunities at work, where he was met with unexpected support from colleagues who admired his resilience. Yet, as the weeks turned into months, Thomas realized that the journey was far from over. Linda had not given up easily. She was still trying to manipulate the narrative, reaching out to friends and attempting to paint herself as the victim. Thomas knew that he had to stay the course. He wanted to ensure that her actions didn't go unchallenged, and that the lessons learned were not just his to bear, but also for those who had once cheered for their love. One evening, as he sat down to write in his journal, he found himself reflecting on the nature of love and betrayal. He realized that while he had sought retribution, what he truly wanted was closure, a chance to reclaim his life without the shadow of betrayal looming over him. It was time to take the final step in his journey toward liberation from Linda's deception. He decided to send out a letter to their family and friends, one that would provide his side of the story without malice, but with clarity and honesty. He wanted them to know the truth, not to vilify Linda, but to ensure that they understood the impact of infidelity. It was a chance for him to stand tall once more, to reclaim his dignity, and let others know that he would not be defined by her choices. As he penned the letter, he felt a sense of release. It was cathartic to put his thoughts into words, to articulate the pain he had endured, and to share the lessons he had learned. He wanted them to remember that trust is fragile, and that love must be nurtured, not taken for granted. It was a painful but important message, one that he hoped would resonate with those who read it. With the letter finished, Thomas took a moment to gather his thoughts. He knew that it would be delivered to the people who mattered most in their lives, and that it would spark conversations that needed to happen. He looked out the window, watching the rain fall softly, and felt a sense of calm wash over him. But even as he sought closure, a part of him still wondered what Linda's next move would be. Would she retaliate? Would she try to manipulate their friends even further? The uncertainty loomed over him, but he was prepared. He had transformed his pain into strength, and whatever came next, he would face it head-on, armed with the knowledge that he had done the right thing. And as he sealed the envelope, he felt a sense of control return to his life, a feeling he had thought lost forever. The wheels were in motion, and he was ready for whatever came next, ready to face Linda once again, not as a victim, but as a man who had reclaimed his worth. In a quiet suburb, where the streets were lined with perfectly manicured lawns, and the sound of laughter echoed from backyard barbecues, lived a man named Tom. He was a devoted husband and father, cherishing every moment with his wife Lisa and their 2 kids. Their life appeared picture perfect, but beneath the surface, trouble was brewing. Tom had recently noticed subtle changes in Lisa's behavior. Late nights at work turned into unexplained absences, and her phone seemed to be glued to her hand. A gnawing suspicion began to take root in his mind. One evening, while cleaning out the garage, he stumbled upon an old box of memories, letters, photographs, and a diary that belonged to Lisa. As he flipped through the pages, the ink blurred with the weight of betrayal. Names he didn't recognize danced across the paper, and entries hinted at an affair that shattered the illusion of their happy marriage. His heart raced as he processed the painful truth. Lisa had been unfaithful, and the carefully constructed facade of their life crumbled before him. Anger surged within him, but instead of lashing out, Tom chose to strategize. He knew he had to confront Lisa, but he also wanted to ensure that she understood the magnitude of her actions. The following weekend, Tom planned a family outing, inviting Lisa to a local amusement park. He packed a picnic, but his true intention was to set the stage for a confrontation. As they strolled through the park, the laughter of children filled the air, but Tom felt a storm brewing inside him. After a few hours of pretending to enjoy the day, he finally found a quiet spot near a small lake. He turned to Lisa, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "We need to talk." The words hung heavy in the air. Tom laid out the evidence from the diary, recounting the moments he felt betrayed, the love he had given, and the trust that had been shattered. Lisa's face paled as she realized the extent of his knowledge. Instead of apologizing, Lisa became defensive, claiming Tom had pushed her away. In that moment, Tom realized that no amount of reasoning could mend the rift that had formed between them. He had 2 choices: seek revenge to satisfy his anger, or find a way to rebuild his life. Tom chose a path of empowerment. He decided to focus on himself and his children. He started going to the gym, picking up new hobbies, and spending quality time with his kids. With each passing day, he felt stronger and more in control of his life. He reconnected with friends, shared his story, and found solace in their support. As the weeks turned into months, Lisa began to see the impact of her choices. Tom blossomed into a confident and independent man, no longer defined by his marriage. One day, as he was picking up his kids from school, he saw Lisa approaching. She looked different, remorseful, and ready to confront the reality of her actions. "Tom, can we talk?" she asked, her voice shaky. They found a quiet corner, and Lisa began to apologize sincerely, acknowledging the pain she had caused. But Tom had moved forward. He had learned to value himself beyond their relationship. He listened, but made it clear that he was no longer the same man who would accept betrayal. "I think we need to focus on co-parenting," he said gently but firmly. "We can work together for the kids, but I can't go back to how things were." Lisa nodded, understanding that the bridge she had burned was no longer a path they could travel together. Over time, they developed a new relationship, one rooted in respect for their children, but devoid of the romantic ties that had once bound them. Tom found peace in his new life, embracing the possibilities ahead. He discovered that revenge did not always involve retaliation. Sometimes, the greatest revenge is living well and thriving despite the pain. In the end, Tom learned that betrayal can lead to unexpected growth. He became a better father, a stronger man, and an example for his kids on how to rise above adversity. And as for Lisa, she took the hard lesson to heart, working on herself and hoping to be a better person for the kids they both loved dearly. The story closed not with bitterness, but with a sense of resolution and newfound strength, proving that even in the face of betrayal, one could emerge victorious.